AJK's side in the it's a hardware problem. They're fixing up. If you permit, meanwhile, we can start up the proceedings, and he can join us later.
Please do. Please do.
Or issue, Air Marshal Masood sir, is that okay, both of you? Okay, Asad?
Right.
You
sir.
can start up.
Copy, sir. Thank you, sir.
Wherever he comes, he's welcome to join.
Right, sir. Right, sir. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. This is your host, Asadullah Khan. I am Senior Research Fellow at the Center for Aerospace and Security Studies, Islamabad. It is my great honor to host this webinar, very timely and important webinar, in fact, in which we have put together perhaps best possible panel and the most illustrious experts on Kashmir issue. We are well aware of the fact that Kashmir issue is evolving day by day after the illegal Indian steps taken on and after August 5, 2019. So the topic of today's webinar is post-August 5, 2019, illegal Indian actions, dynamics, implications, and options. Kashmir issue is one of the oldest disputes on UN agenda, and most of us are well versed about the history of the Kashmir dispute. Therefore, in this webinar, we will try to focus on the developments and scenarios occurred in the aftermath of abrogation of Article 370 and 35A. We all know that August 5, 2019, Indian actions of abrogating Article 370 and 35A are very important in terms of human rights, geopolitics, diplomacy, and regional security environment. Therefore, today we'll evaluate all these critical aspects in this webinar. During the past 2 years, India has further changed the dynamics of IOJK by introducing new domicile laws, new land laws, and new media policy for the occupied territory. The laws are changed with the aim to bring demographic changes and to impose Modi's Hindutva ideology in IOJK. These illegal Indian steps are being viewed as clear violation of various UN resolutions. Furthermore, the recent meeting of Prime Minister Modi with Gupkar delegation reveals that Indian intent to legitimize its actions domestically in IOJK by deceiving the international community. The aim of this webinar is to analyze the significance of these major developments and explore relevant policy options to address the issue in political, security, and strategic domains. Therefore, I'm honored to introduce our illustrious panel for today's webinar. The keynote speaker for today's webinar is Honorable Sardar Masood Khan, President Azad Jammu and Kashmir. Sardar Masood Khan is currently serving as the 27th President of Azad Jammu and Kashmir. Before becoming the President, he was Director General of the Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad. Prior to getting elected as President of AJK, Sardar Masood Khan had a long diplomatic career with Foreign Service of Pakistan. Most notably, he served as the spokesperson of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Pakistan's ambassador and permanent representative to United Nations and other international organizations in Geneva, and Pakistan's ambassador to China. Our second speaker of the webinar is Air Marshal Masood Akhtar, retired, a fighter pilot for over 33 years with a master's in war studies. Air Marshal Masood Akhtar has lectured extensively on national security policy, air power doctrine, strategy, and leadership at staff and war colleges and National Defense University. He also represented Pakistan at the Royal United Services Institute and the International Institute for Strategic Studies in the United Kingdom. In the Pakistan Air Force, he commanded a flying squadron, a fighter wing, and has been Director General Air Intelligence, Commandant Air War College, Chief Instructor National Defense Course, and Director General National Accountability Bureau. The Air Marshal retired as Deputy Chief of Air Staff Training. He developed and advised Government of Pakistan on the country's national security policy and strategy and entered a program titled Debate Secure Pakistan on Sama TV. Ladies and gentlemen, the guest of honor for today's webinar is General Zubair Mahmood Hayat, retired former Chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee. Commissioned in 1976, General Zubair Mahmood Hayat has a decorated military career that spans over 4 decades. He is a graduate of Fort Sill, Oklahoma, USA, Command and Staff College, Camberley, United Kingdom, and National Defense University, Pakistan. He has 2 master's degree in war studies and military science. He is also a recipient of Humanities. He's also a recipient of Humanities Gold Medal, Master's Gunner Award, and Master Warfighter Award. He has delivered lectures on peace, security, and defense in foreign military institutions and think tanks across 6 continents. During his service, the general has commanded an infantry division and corps. His key staff appointments include Army and Air Advisors United Kingdom, Chief of Staff of a Strike Corps, Private Secretary to Chief of Army Staff, Director General Staff Duties at General Headquarters, Director General Strategic Plans Division, and Chief of General Staff, Pakistan Army. The chair of today's webinar is Deputy President CAS Air Marshal Farhat Hussain Khan. He was commissioned in GDP branch of PAF in March 1977. After commissioning, he served as fighter pilot in various frontline fighter squadrons. During his service, he remained on various important command and staff appointments. His command assignments include command of a fighter squadron, a fighter wing, and an operational PF air base. His appointments at Air Headquarters included Additional Director General, Air Force Strategic Command, Chief Project Director of JF-17 Program, and Vice Chief of Air Staff, an appointment he held till his retirement in 2013. He also has served as Chairman Pakistan Aeronautical Complex Board, Camera. He has been President Ski Federation of Pakistan on CAA Board and Chairman Monitoring Committee of Islamabad and Multan airports. Air Marshal has also served as Pakistan's Air Attaché in New Delhi. He is a co-author of 2 books, The Aviation City and Milestones, about the growth of military aviation industry in Pakistan and its way forward. So as per theme of the webinar, I would request our esteemed panelists to analyze and assess how the geopolitical dynamics of the Kashmir issues have evolved during the past 2 years. What are the contemporary regional security implications of the illegal Indian actions after August 5, 2019? And what are the strategic and policy options and possible way forward for Pakistan in terms of conflict resolution of the Kashmir dispute? So without any further delay, I would request Air Marshal Masood Akhtar Saab to give his remarks till we are joined by Honorable President Sardar Masood Khan. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Asad. I hope I'm audible to everyone. Yes. Before I come to assumptions and implications of what all has transpired so far, let me do a quick recap. And I'll start with the retired Air Vice Marshal Kapil Kak, who is a navigator from the Indian Air Force, retired. And he's also a Pandit from the Valley. He said, number one, he said, we joined, that means the Kashmiris, they joined India for its liberal values and its secularism. And Modi has turned all this upside down on the table. Number two, he said, the annulment of 370 and 35A probably was not truly thought about, and it was in a passion that they did this. And it is akin to a man jumping out of a multi-storied window, and as he comes down, every story he says, so far, so good. So that is the kind of dilemma that the Indian government is going through today. Modi's pet political project to redo Kashmir was in the offing for all these years that BJP has been in power, and they kept the annulment in their manifesto. When they did that, they did it for 2 reasons. Number one, they suppressed, they imposed curfew, and they also put the leaders under house arrest for 2 reasons. Number one, that they can suppress expression of opinions after the annulment. And number two, they can create a king's party, which can reinforce and give permanence to his project. But good for them that this did not happen. This was in fact bad for them. And it failed for 4 reasons. Number one, that King's party failed when he ordered the District Development Council elections. The coalition beat BJP badly, all hands down. And in fact, National Conference made gains in Jammu, where BJP was supposed to sweep the elections. Number two, militancy continued unabated. Number three, the investment that he talked about never came. And number four, the recruitment of the Mujahideen, because allegedly the terrorists from their side, continued unabated. In fact, there was a spike occasionally in this. Thus, Modi took a U-turn, called these parties to a dialogue at Delhi, and he said, this is all about Dilli ki duri and Dil ki duri. And he promised that if they were to join him in delimitation number one, elections number two, he could then, number three, think of restoring statehood, not 370, not unification, not 35A. He took this U-turn. This was a gamble. Simultaneously, something happened in the political environment in the South Asia. India-Pakistan back-channel dialogue took place, and probably this did not happen because of an internal rethink. There were two factors. Number one, the USA indicated and egged both the parties to a dialogue because it wanted a stable South Asia in the backdrop of drawdown of forces from Afghanistan. Number two, there are three actors in this, three Muslim states, which is Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar. They also encouraged both to talk. In fact, as a caveat, Qatar facilitated a dialogue between the Indians and the Taliban at Doha. What is going to happen next? Modi has built in a safety mechanism, and he built in a bargaining chip. Number one, he says that, well, if you join elections, and if you join, and they wanted statehood before election, before the delimitation. He says, I can think of, and we can think of statehood after the elections. But three bargaining chips, no unification, no 370, no 35A. In fact, the political parties also want to remain relevant and didn't want to stay on the margins. So they also were eager to go to Delhi and talk about it. The assumptions are for about 5, 6. Number one, there is a big joker in the field. Nobody can stop the flow of information. So meaning thereby, both for Pakistan and India, whatever we do internally and externally will be quickly known to the people inside and outside Pakistan, and pressure is going to build up on both sides. Number two, Pakistan in the foreseeable future may not be able to, for various dynamics, come to Kashmiri's help physically. Number three, as and when Modi lifts the curfew, there is likely to be a backlash that he and his government may not be able to contain, and that is exactly why he's wanting to have this dialogue. Number four, both India and Pakistan know that there are limits to military power application. India tried it in the strategic strike, it's tried it in the post-Balakot incidents, and now both realize they cannot apply military power. So it may not be applied in future to the extent that we may occasionally think. Next, the situation in Kashmir, in Afghanistan, in Pakistan and India is going to get ever more complex. And so we need to be prepared for it. And last but not the least, ladies and gentlemen, plebiscite that we've been talking about since 47 is far, far away across the horizon now. It's only a fig leaf. We barely managed to keep the Kashmir problem on the agenda of UN Security Council. We will have to do a lot of hard work to reach that plebiscite destination. So we may have to think of alternate policy that I will talk of in implication. Coming out of this, the implications, number one, Pakistan will have to come out with clear policies at the maximalist policy and minimalist. Maximalist, we can keep talking of plebiscite, we can keep talking of the rights, but minimalist, we may have to work around what Musharraf said, the 4 principles: demilitarization, autonomy, local government, open all the borders so that people can have all the rights and facilities. By the way, all the proposals for Kashmir solution, even before that, 6-7 of them, we talk of Owen Dixon, we talk of Chenab plan, they all worked around these, somewhere around these four points. Next, Pakistan will have to make Kashmir a model of political, fiscal economy and progress. And after that, the recent rigging allegations against the ruling party, both in Pakistan and as well as in Kashmir, brings very bad name to Pakistan. So in case we wish to solve Kashmir problem and help it, we will have to do something about it, especially in Kashmir. So treat Kashmir, that is Jammu and Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan, this is the radical implication that I'm giving, as like provinces, not as provinces, and put in the language in the constitution, notwithstanding the future solution of Pakistan, the Kashmiris, to the wish of the Kashmiris of the Kashmir problem, so that the political parties must go about requesting them, please vote for us, for us in the Senate seats and the National Assembly seats that we will give. Till then, Kashmiris will continue to vote for the party in the federation, and it will bring some very bad name to us, and India will use this as a propaganda tool. Next, we will have to put Kashmiris as the basic stakeholders up front in all negotiations. India pushes them away because it is to their advantage. But if we put Kashmiris up front as the central stakeholders, I think there is a lot of value in this. The people across the international community will listen to us. Number 6, let us put Kashmir in the context, squarely in the context of national interest, which we have not done till now. We could define the vital national interest in terms of a universal paradigm, which is, there is a mnemonic called national defense of a progressive Pakistan, national integration and harmony, defense and security of Pakistan, economic well-being, favorable regional and global order, people security versus state security, and lastly, promotion of values. Kashmir will come somewhere in the economic, it may not come in the first 1 or 2. And lastly, but most important, let us put our house in order in case we wish to help Kashmiris solve Kashmir problems. And the reason is that we will have to speak with one voice. Today, Pakistani leadership is not speaking with one voice. And number 2, to prepare for very, very complex environment in case there is renewed insurgency and terrorism. And we are becoming ripe for a 5th generation hybrid warfare. Ajit Doval has very clearly said, we will pay money and we are going to buy people that are available galore in Pakistan, and we will tell them to go and attack various places. In the backdrop of Afghan drawdown, things are going to get very messy, and we could be ending up I hope I'm very wrong, insurgency, mild insurgency and terrorism. To conclude, ladies and gentlemen, my recommendations are: number 1, for God's sake, please, let's cut down on the rhetoric. It doesn't help us one bit. It has spoiled Kashmir problem. We are not a very big nation. We must become competent ourselves. We must have a sound foreign policy. We must lay down a national security policy. We must put Kashmir within the context of national interest. Number two, we must lay down a clear maximalist and minimalist policy. Number 3, we must put our house in order. And even if we have done that, let us prepare for a renewed insurgency and possibility of terrorism and a 5th generation warfare against us, for which we may become right if we don't do these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for analyzing the current situation from a security lens and connecting it with the current regional scenarios. And no doubt that the decision that Modi government has taken was a decision in haste and without proper planning and results are in front of us. And your policy suggestion regarding the contextualizing the Kashmir cause as our national interest is, I think, very important to understand for our policymakers. Without further ado, I would request President AJK, Sardar Masood Khan, to make kindly, sir, your keynote address. Sir, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Hello, can you hear me?
Sir, you're audible. Sir, you're audible.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sir, he can hear you.
Sir, we can hear you, sir.
me?
Sir, we can hear you, sir. Yes, you're audible, sir.
All right, all right. Thank you so much. I'll be very brief because of the bad connection and because of some other engagements, because it's an election day for the Prime Minister of Jammu and Kashmir. So let me go straight to the core issues. The first is that, these last 2 years have been very bad for the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. I'm sure that Air Marshal Masood Akhtar must have already given the inventory and you in your introduction. But let me briefly recount what has happened. The demography has been changed. It's not going to happen in the future. It has already changed. Second, 80% of the Kashmiri's land in the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir has been expropriated. Third, what is happening is that the Kashmiri's businesses are being delegitimized, and now outsiders are monopolizing those businesses, and they are subcontracting those businesses to the Kashmiris. Fourth point is that right now the occupying authorities are in the process of re-delimiting the constituencies. Their purpose is to increase the number of members in the Legislative Assembly of Hindus or Dogras in a puppet assembly that they would constitute probably in the future. In any case, it's a union territory by their designation. It's no more a state that it used to be. It's no more that disputed territory that it used to be. It is from our point of view, but from the point of view of Delhi, it is now a capital territory, federal capital territory. And there, if they have a legislative structure, they want to increase the number of Hindus in that puppet assembly and decrease the number of Muslim representatives. So not only that, there has been massive manipulation in statistics. So the simple purpose is to change the Indian occupied Kashmir into a Hindu Rashtra or a Hindu province. This is what is going on right now. Urdu has been banished. Hindi script and Hindi language are being imposed to the people. Temples are being constructed. There's been a mapping done of the temples that would be constructed in the entire territory. Now, all these things that have been happening, according to international law, the Geneva Convention, the ICC statutes, Security Council resolutions, customary international law, they're all war crimes or crimes against humanity, and India is accountable as that effect. But there are no Nuremberg trials right now. There are no Nuremberg courts right now. So India is getting off scot-free for all the crimes that it is committing. And it is working under the cover of the United States because it's a close partner of the United States of America. And because of that alliance, it gets away with murder. And it is also implementing measure after measure in the playbook of Israel, which first occupied the territory of Palestine, then, of course, it created Bantustans there, these occupied territory pockets of Israeli settlers. And then now they say that the entire Palestinian territory is theirs and Palestinians are outsiders. Similarly, this is what they're saying about Kashmir, that Kashmiris are no more, or Kashmiri Muslims to be very precise, are no more the legitimate legal inhabitants. It's the outsiders, the Hindus, who would be the legitimate settlers. So occupation is going on. Now, let me tell you that what is it that we ought to do, what have we done, what we ought to do, and what ought to have done, as a matter of fact. These are 3 points that I want to address. First, we have to realize that it is a civilizational war. It is a war between two doctrines. Nation theory has resurfaced again. It is a fight against Hindus and Muslims beyond the right to self-determination. And these both lines are deep. Therefore, our reaction was diplomatic, and it was good reaction after August the 5th, 2019. The international community also stood by us for a while, but then their attention drifted or was diverted because of number of developments. We also did our best. Now, what I want to emphasize here is that we have been working on the diplomatic front, but we have not sufficiently, optimally worked on the political pencil, because that's where we should have made a difference, because it ought to be a people's movement, civil rights movement, not just confined to the chambers of the United Nations or, let's say, other international forums. United Nations reaction has also been lukewarm. And therefore, while our diplomats have been quite active, I think that our political parties have not yet created a shared platform to project the point of view that we hold and to highlight the atrocities and the war crimes that are taking place in the Indian occupied Jammu. The last point is that recently there has been awareness about lawfare. We need to go to the international forums, whether it is ICJ or ICC. If it is not us, the third parties can go there, or the International Law Commission, or European Court for Human Rights, or many other forums which are there, because crimes against humanity or genocide is happening along the lines of the crimes that were perpetrated last century during the interwar period in Germany and during the war in Germany and Italy. So this genocide is more sinister, more lethal. Finally, I would say that it has been said time and again that this whole region is a powder keg. As a matter of fact, if it is ignited at any point, there would be a war. And it is not just the responsibility of India and Pakistan, or just the responsibility of Kashmiris. It's the responsibility of the entire world to stem that war. That risk is there, that peril cannot be just swept under the carpet. I would like to conclude here. I thank Cass and Marshal Horat and for hosting this event. I was looking forward to it, but because of some bad connection, we have lost some time. But congratulations, and we are proud of the focused meetings that you are holding. And we are grateful to you for your attention to the issue of Jammu and Kashmir. Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your keynote address, despite the fact that you are having a busy day today. And also we are suffering from this bad internet connection today as well. And you have rightly pointed out that India is trying to convert Kashmir into Hindu Rashtra. And in this regard, our reaction is diplomatic, and it is a very well coordinated and a good response. And you have rightly pointed out that India, with the help of lawfare, is also trying to change the current dynamics of the Kashmir dispute. With this, we'll now come towards our third speaker of our webinar, and you will probably agree that perhaps there is no speaker more qualified and knowledgeable to assess the strategic significance of the illegal Indian actions, as well as explore and identify various policy and strategic options to address this issue in a comprehensive manner. So I'm honored to invite today's guest of honor, General Zubair Mahmood Hayat, former Chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee, to address this webinar. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Asad. Auzubillahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Let me start, first of all, by thanking CAS and Air Marshal Farhat Hussain for inviting me to this webinar on a topic on which not only I have dealt for a major part of my life, but also which is very close to my heart. I wish to thank President Azad Jammu and Kashmir, Ambassador Sardar Masood Khan Saab, and Air Marshal Masood for setting the stage for what I have to say. I will dwell upon conflict resolution, strat options, and way forward. Before I start, I must like to put on record that I'm a retired person, and these are my personal and private views, and there's nothing official about it. Now, let me give you my opening shot. You see, it's been 2 years almost to the day when this occurred, 2 years to the day. My core argument is that in its 75 years of post-British independent India, India carried out two strategic miscalculations. The first strategic miscalculation that India carried out was in 1998, the Pokhran II nuclear blast. That was a strategic miscalculation because it enabled Pakistan to establish strategic parity. And that is something from which India will not be able to get away from. India provided Pakistan that opportunity to level the playing field on the strategic front. And therefore, to me, 1998 Pokhran II nuclear blast, and incidentally, at that time also it was the BJP government which did this strategic miscalculation. And to me, the second strategic miscalculation now is the August 5th annexation of Kashmir. Now, these are my two basic premises. Why I say that? Because it's important to understand why I made this statement that this is a strategic miscalculation. Because by taking the August 5th action, four things have fundamentally altered, or four things have fundamentally changed. First, the context of the Kashmir conflict has changed. Second, the framework of Kashmir context has changed. Third, the character of the Kashmir conflict has changed. And finally, fourth and the last, the nature of the Kashmir conflict has changed. Now, if all these four foundational bases, they get changed, you then enter into an altered strategic environment. And this alteration of strategic environment is the miscalculation which they have done. They have tried to satisfy their BJP RSS agenda, which was very domestic in nature, which was basically oriented towards the Brahmanic Hindu audience. But in doing so, they have altered these four basic constructs and 4 bases that I have spoken about. Therefore, as we now talk about strategic options and the way forward, I think we need to first establish the core principle of this domain. The core principle of this domain is that all options are now on the table. Now, this is what the strategic miscalculation of India has done. This is what Modi has provided to Pakistan. This is what RSS has provided to Pakistan. This is what BJP has provided to Pakistan. This is what the raw-driven agenda has provided to Pakistan. For the first time, legitimately, all options have opened up for Pakistan. And I think 10 foreign offices of Pakistan could not have done the favor to Pakistan or the service to Pakistan what Modi's and RSS and BJP's action of the 5th of August have done. They have enabled unlocking of the door, which has put forth a complete spectrum of options in front of Pakistan. The ball is no longer in India's court. The ball is in Pakistan's court, and it is for Pakistan to play the game. And it will put India on a defensive and reverse mode. Now, why do I say that? I say that because I find that in 3 fundamentals, these strategic options and their spectrum has opened up. First, we all know that the world is now in an intense great power competition. And I believe that in a sense, Kashmir has become pivotal to the great power competition. This is a very monumental event to have occurred. And we know that in a great power competition, the stakes are very high. The players are very big, but also the effects and the results are equally at stake. So when Kashmir becomes pivotal to great power competition, this is the strategic miscalculation that RSS and BJP has done. Number 2, you see, since the nuclearization of South Asia, Kashmir was considered as a nuclear flashpoint. I think what has happened post 5th August 2019 is that Kashmir's position as a nuclear flashpoint has been solidified. It is now an established nuclear flashpoint of great significance and impact, one which is no longer bilateral in nature, one which has significance beyond the region and which has significant trans frontiers. And the third and the most fundamental that I would wish to put is that in a sense, if ever there was to be a trigger for World War III, not only that Kashmir has become a nuclear flashpoint, I believe that Kashmir has become a trigger for World War III. And therefore, if we have to avoid the Thucydides trap, it is fundamental that the resolution of the Kashmir issue, in accordance with the UN resolutions and the charter and the wishes of the people of Kashmir, is taken into place. So let me just quickly recollect the 3 fundamentals. It's become a pivot in the great power competition. It's solidified as a nuclear flashpoint, and it has possibly become a trigger to World War III. Now, briefly, and then I will conclude. You see, it has 3 fundamental principles for which the way forward will take place at the international domain, at the regional domain, and at the internal domain. Now, at the international domain, We always said that Kashmir was never a bilateral issue, but India insisted that it was through a malicious and wrong interpretation of the Simla Agreement. What 5th of August has done is that Kashmir issue has truly become international by both fault and default of India. And therefore we saw that in the United Nations, even after 50 years, even if informally, Kashmir was discussed and echoed in those forums. So now is the opportunity. Now is this time for all options. Let me give you some feel of it. You see, the United Nations oldest forum, the UNMOGIB, the United Nations Military Observer Group in India and Pakistan. Now is the time to increase the scale, the scope, and the mandate of UNMOGIB. Let the world see through its own eyes and ears of what India is doing to the occupied territory. And when I say UNMOGIB, UNMOGIB is a military observer part of that. Now is the time when I say all options open, there's a special international United Nations appointed rapporteur for Kashmir needs to be appointed. A special focal person who needs to then brief the United Nations Security Council on his findings and on his observations. And those observations and findings need to be shared not only with the members of the United Nations Security Council, but also United Nations members as a whole. Now is the time, because of this open prison of 12 million people, to bring in organizations such as Amnesty International into play. And not once, but repeatedly through other forums, so that this basic pillar of democracy behind which India would like to, shield itself, that pillar is exposed fundamentally, not only by the state of Pakistan, but by actors beyond the state of Pakistan. We need to organize international organizations, and I think time has opened up, like Doctors Without Frontiers, to go to that part of the valley and see the victims of torture, see the victims of rape, see the victims of the pellet guns that the Indian state repression has actually put on Kashmir. And maybe, I think the diaspora of Kashmir needs a political face, a political front, a united front, and that can be done in any fashion. If the United States Secretary of State can come and meet leaders of exiled Tibetan government in New Delhi, I find no reason why the representatives of the People's Republic of China and Russia cannot come and meet the Hurriyat Party conference leadership here in Islamabad. And I think that is the kind of opening up that has now occurred because of this. Now, in the regional context, I believe that as a part of strategic options, there could be, and there are emerging regional construct, the PCR construct, the Pakistan, China, Russia construct, the PCRI construct, the Pakistan, China, Russia, Iran construct, and PCRI plus and so forth. So the regional dynamics have now opened up, and those regional dynamics can be used to the advantage of the Kashmiri people so that this 70 years of suffering can actually take place. We should insist as a part of this strategic options, opening up of humanitarian corridor to the illegal Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And we must insist that this humanitarian corridor must be opened in earnest, and international organizations, regional organizations international states, regional states must come forward to participate in this humanitarian corridor to help the people of Kashmir. Now, internally, I think President Masood Khan Sahab has also spoken about the lawfare part of it. I think we should use lawfare to our own advantage, because we have international law organizations which can be judiciously incorporated into highlighting the wrongs, the genocide that is occurring, this ethnic change that is being perforce imposed on Kashmir. And I think we need to be internally more constitutionally proactive and see what constitutional amendments we can do to enhance our strategic space, what constitutional amendments we can do to enhance our strategic leverages, what constitutional amendments we can do to enhance our strategic proclamation on the jurisdiction on those territories that are now under the illegal occupation of Kashmir. We must also harness the power of media, and I think that has been spoken. This cannot be hidden. And I think this is a great field where we can equalize and dominate in the fields should we wish. And finally, but not the last, as a military man, I believe the entire population of Azad Jammu and Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan must be made part of this struggle by introducing voluntary conscriptions where all able-bodied persons, whether male or female, above the age of 18 must be incorporated, so that we raise the stakes not only defensively for India, but also offensively for India. I thank you for a patient hearing.
Sir, thank you for analyzing the strategic context. And you have rightly pointed out that 4 things have changed: the context, framework, character, and nature with respect to Kashmir dispute. You have also mentioned that Kashmir is now highlighted and discussed on international level, and we can also endorse this fact from assessing international response to Indian illegal actions. In fact, the recent letter of 16 EU MEPs to President European Commission regarding the implementation of various UN resolution is an important and significant development in this regard. So with this now, I'll move towards the question and answer session. Being a chair, I'll take the liberty to ask question first. I have 2 questions in my mind, sir. Respect panelists. The Indian presidency of UNSC, how will this impact on the current dynamics of the Kashmir dispute? And do you think Pakistan should be diplomatically concerned over this? And will India try to suppress the issue of Kashmir on the forum of UN? Also, the second question is about Modi's statement of returning the statehood to the Kashmir. How will this shape the dynamics of Kashmir dispute in the coming days? My questions are open, sir, to all the 3 panelists, whoever like to answer.
Chair Master Sahab, aap bataiye.
Sir, you're not audible. You're audible.
First of all, the UN Security Council chairmanship or presidency, try India will to marginalize Kashmir issue. They will. But let's not forget that there is a new Biden administration, which is Democrat, which is pro-human rights, which has nudged India into doing what it did, talk to Pakistan. And of course, they nudged Pakistan also to that. So they're the biggest player. The left of center governments in Europe also are likely to toe the same line. So it will become simpler with the help of the European and of course the American leadership. Proviso is Pakistan must do its job. The exterior maneuver the foreign policy maneuver must do well, must do well. Second question that you asked about what is going to happen next. Could you just repeat the question, please? Second one.
Sir, the second question was regarding the returning or the restoring of the statehood to the Kashmir.
Okay, okay. Like I said, this is a bargaining chip that Modi and BJP have built into the equation. And they've already said, number one, of course, and my research tells that the political parties also were keen to go to Delhi and talk to Modi because they didn't want to be marginalized. And but Modi has built into it, number one, he is going to offer not statehood immediately. He says delimitation, number one, elections, number two, and then he can think of doing this. And statehood alone means minus 370, minus 35A, and minus, of course, the unification. That means putting together Ladakh and Jammu and Kashmir together. That is totally out of the question. So the Kashmiris will have to put up a struggle onto this. And in case Modi lifts the curfew one day, which he will have to, because the pressure is going to build on him. There could be a backlash, there could be more pressure. So it depends entirely on the Kashmiri leadership in Srinagar, number one, the people of Kashmir, number two. How do we play our exterior maneuver in Pakistan, number three? And let me remind all your viewers and listeners that till now, we have not even put together our national interests since 47. I think we must do that. We must improve our exterior maneuver. It will do good to us on both counts. Thank you.
Sajjan Zubair.
I'll just make a brief comment. As far as the return of the statehood is concerned, this is a lollipop. And I think at strategic level, nobody should be able to be hoodwinked by a lollipop that has been actually displayed in front of a child. You see, it was Nehru who said, if you don't want to live with us, you can go your way and we will go our way. That lollipop has existed for 70 years. What Modi has done, he's not trying to create space by offering such kind of lollipops. The return to statehood would mean nothing without returning to the status quo. And status quo was not acceptable to the Pakistan, remember. Returning to status quo means abolishing what he has undone, 370, 35 alpha, giving union territory rights of possession of territory, businesses, and so forth and so forth. You see, he has to not only undo all those actions and come to the position of 4th of August, which was still unacceptable to Pakistan, to be able to move forward. And therefore, this now that I will think about returning to 37 alpha is vague, is ambiguous, is a lollipop that we will not be able to pick in any sense. The second, India's presidency. We have no illusions about what India's desire is. It's a rotational vacancy. India has not earned it. It comes through its own route. And we know that as far as India is concerned, it has put forward for this year, for this month, 3 basic core issues that it would like to address. Also, I saw yesterday that Afghanistan is asking India now to bring the issue of Afghanistan and the current situation in the United Nations Security Council. That is also something looming very heavily on India's shoulder and head. And therefore, their more focus in the 30 days, out of which 4 have already passed, will be difficult to achieve. India's presidency, I think the bare minimum that it would like to achieve is to frame Kashmir problem in the context of terrorism as they have defined, and not allow that context to change in the United Nations framework. That would be India's core objective as far as their United Nations Security Council seat is concerned. I know India has some supporters there, but India has lost legitimacy as far as this narrative is concerned, because this narrative now has been beaten so badly that it is only India in itself and their own comfort zone that they want to listen to their own echoes in their own chamber. And I think India has to come out, and this United Nations Security Council presidency will not be able to help India. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for analyzing the questions and answering the questions very deeply. The next question is from Ambassador Jalil Abbasilani. India has already started saying that what it has done on August 5, 2019 is not different from what Pakistan has been doing in AJK or GB. How would, according provisional provincial status to GB, pending a final resolution, be interpreted in Kashmir, India, and internationally? Secondly, any views on the recent statement of PM Modi to hold a referendum in AJK? Would it help the cause or create more complications? So the question is open, sir. He has requested to President Masood Khan, but unfortunately, Sardar Masood Khan, President AJK, has left because of his other commitments. So if you can answer anyone of you.
Okay, I'll just make a brief comment. With regard to Gilgit-Baltistan, my position has been we need to think it through, and I will maintain that status as of now. With regard to Modi's referendum statement, I, for one, do not believe a word coming out of Modi's mouth, and therefore I will also leave it at that.
I'll just add to what General Zubair Hayat said. Absolutely, and but we will have to put up with what Modi does, what happens in the UN Security Council, and this will all have to be counted. Like I'll reiterate this: a great exterior maneuver that will help us a lot. Thank you.
Right, sir. Thank you. The next question is by Syed Muhammad Ali, Director CAS. How the growing tensions between India and China are expected to affect the Chinese stance toward Kashmir issue, and secondly, how Indo-US strategic relations affect the Kashmir issue. Sir, General Zubair Mahmood, sir, the question is directed towards you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me take the Indo-US relationship and its impact on China. You see, late Mr. Holbrooke, who was working as a US representative and used to come for what he used to term as FPAC. I once asked him, I said, Mr. Holbrooke, why don't you raise the issue of Kashmir so that you have a broader construct in South Asia? And Mr. Holbrooke told me that even if I was to raise the word K, they will not allow me to enter India. You see, so if a superpower cedes one of the bases because it has other bases which it considers more important, and the bases are well known, therefore, in that context, we should be under no illusion how Kashmir would be treated. And we have seen the statements that has emanated that they would like to treat it as a bilateral issue. This is a negation of the fact, but this is how it stands. But on the other hand, the first question that he talked about, India and China, because I think both these questions are linked. You cannot, disassociate the Indo-US equation with respect to Kashmir and the India-China with the equation to Kashmir. What has happened, I think, is that previously, as a matter of policy, China had kept herself as not a direct party to the Kashmir dispute. And therefore it had, and you saw that in the Constitution of Pakistan, a provision that once the issue of Kashmir has been settled in accordance with the wishes of the Kashmiri people, then Pakistan and China will settle the boundary issues mutually. But what India did, and that's the strategic miscalculation that I alluded to in my talk, was that by taking this action of 5th of August, India has induced China into this equation. So if the previous equation was Pakistan, India, the new equation is Pakistan, India, and China. So if India was a 50% party and stakeholder to this, India has now by default being reduced to a 33% party to the same conflict. And that is how I thank Mr. Modi for doing what he has done. Thank you.
Sir Air Marshal Masood Akhtar, if you want to comment on this.
I will only add that Chinese foreign policy and national security policy has been most pragmatic for the last, let's say, about 30 years, ever since Deng Xiaoping took over and gave a new direction to China. Chinese always came to us when I had a stint at NDU, and they said, look, we have gotten Hong Kong without firing a single shot. One day we will also get Taiwan. So they told us also to be very pragmatic. They may have a conflict at Ladakh, but I think in the back, and they'll continue to support us at the Security Council, at the UNO, and on other forums, including FATF. But behind the scenes, they will be telling us that be pragmatic, and that is what we must learn from China. But the China-India equation, like General Zubair Hayat said, if at all, it will increase, it will be to the detriment of the Indians, because they will be telling many things to the Indians, much more than they will be telling us. And of course, CPEC is a big issue. And our containment doctrine, that means US is trying to contain China through India, and China wants us to help them contain both India and states. So I think it will work to our advantage. Thank you.
With this, sir, I would like to add one more thing. Sir, don't you think in modern hybrid warfare, environment of modern hybrid warfare environment, the non-kinetic options have become more significant in current strategic environment? Sir, General Zubair Mahmood Hayat, what's your take on this, sir?
No, thank you. I think you bring out a very pertinent point. You see, when you in the hybrid warfare, you use all instruments, and you apply pressure points where you have to in domains. Now, look at this recent two events. The Kashmir Premier League in cricket. You see, by acting the way India is acting against the KPL has transcended from a sports event to a political event. And it carries now political ramifications. It carries social ramifications. Because people in Kashmir, both on both sides of the line of control, will think, and rightly so, because they are quite crazy for cricket. You know, whenever Pakistan wins a cricket match, the Pakistani flag is raised in Srinagar. So now when the KPL was being played and India is trying to politicize KPL, I think these are the kind of hybrid tools that will become increasingly important in our quest to ensure that India's quest to keep this issue off the burner negatively. Secondly, as part of the hybrid warfare, it enables Pakistan to play on the ground of truth. I'll give you an example. You see, when I was commanding a division, in Sialkot about 10 to 12 years ago. One of the outposts of Unmugib was present there. And one of the generals who was in charge of the Unmugib, when he passed through that, I had a dinner with him. Now, his take was 10 years ago. He said, when we come to Pakistan, we are in an open country. We are allowed to go where we want to go. We visit clubs, we visit bazaars, we visit sports grounds, we do our shopping, we do our tourism. He said, when we go to India, the same Unmugib people, because 6 months they are here, 6 months they go to the other part. They said, we are confined in a small place and we are almost a prisoner being kept over there. Now, if these kind of issues are brought to fore, now I have told you this in a webinar 10 years later, but how many people in the world know that Unmugib is basically kept in prison as far as India is concerned? So I think hybrid warfare is a field where we have a dominance, and we must exploit that dominance to our advantage. And India knows it, and knows it for sure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So the next question from one of the participants, Mr. Imran Abbas, is what would likely be the dynamics of politics in India in the post-Modi India or the post-BJP era? And will there be any change and why? Sir, the question is open, sir. Anyone can answer from the panel.
Okay, let me take this one. But to your previous question, let me quickly add, Ajit Doval said it all. And this was reinforced by General Bikram Singh, ex-army chief. They said, we don't have to send our military. We just have to buy people. We have more money. And Ajit Doval had the cheeks to say that you do one Bombay and you will, one Mumbai and you will lose Balochistan. That's obviously an overstatement. But the simmering insurgency in Balochistan is a case in point. The attack in Lahore, through non-kinetic means, they were able to rattle our leadership and the population in Pakistan. And it is so simple to do, because for the terrorists that they buy, they say, okay, here is the money, go and attack, and General Bikram said, go and attack Bahawalpur, go and attack such and such place. So it is very simple and easy. Coming to the dynamics of BJP, likelihood is that the next elections, because of the COVID response, because of the annulment, they may not win the next elections, but they will have a sizable, they would have made a sizable dent the way President Masood Ahmed said and the way General Zubair Hayat said. They would have made a sizable dent, but they would also have earned some negative support from the population in India. Likelihood is they may not form the government, but BJP will still continue to play a very major role, because not because they are competent, not because they've done a good job, but because Congress is not doing very well, and that is a major party. The success story in Bengal is too far away. They may not matter as much in Delhi. So it is uncertain how it is going to play out. Next election, they may not win, but they will still continue to be a major force in India, not because they are not good and competent, but because Congress is not doing well at all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, General Zubair Mahmood Hayat, if you want to add something to this.
Thank you very much. You see, BJP is a phenomenon that has not come up in vacuum. From the time Savarkar built the RSS ideology in the early, it has taken 70 years to ingress and come to the position that it came. My take is that the nature and character of the Indian state has moved away from its professed but never practiced principles of secularism into a more open Hindu totalitarianism, Hindu Rashtra mode. And therefore, post-Modi, and Modi is an individual, but RSS is a phenomenon. And this phenomena represents the Hindu majority and represents their inert desires. So I believe that Modi, who is already looking like a sadhu with his big beard that he's grown, we might be moving from sadhus to yogis. So we are going to enter into an even more dangerous domain. Thank you.
Right, sir. Thank you. Another question from participant, and this is for Air Marshal Masood Akhtar. Sir, in future warfare, how does the role of aerospace power is likely to evolve in the changing strategic environment?
Thank you. In case of Indo-Pak scenario, like I said in my talk, both have realized the lack of importance of application of military power. Nobody will permit 10 days or leave alone 20 days long war. And the evidence is plenty. In the wake of Bombay attacks, they wanted to take out some of our targets. Americans came in and stopped them. In case of the Parliament attack, they wanted to do a few things. There was a general who brought the armored formation close to the border. They said stop. India did not, so they gave an advisory to their people in Bangalore to evacuate India, and of course the Europeans followed suit, and India said stop. We're not going to have any war. But if you notice, when it came to surgical strikes, the army made it fail. I mean, they could not give any evidence that they have made any dent into Pakistan's defenses. Last time they opted to come via the aerial route, and Pakistan Air Force was all ready, and on the very next day, broad daylight, they re-established the political and the military deterrence. So air power can be an easier tool than the other services to bring about change in the Indo-Pak equation, but they have also seen that it has failed. So aerospace power would be probably a misnomer, but air power is a tool that can be used by both sides, and Pakistan has proven that it can retaliate in all facets and quickly re-establish deterrence. So Indians also probably will not use air power next time. So I think that both will keep posturing, and we know, of course, we keep reading the press that there are occasionally threatening missions that come from that side. We scramble, we deter them from doing anything. So aerospace power, not per se, but air power will continue to be a factor. And but India has learned its lessons, so probably it will use the non-kinetic means, pure and simple, in case the hybrid warfare or the fifth generation warfare, because it's so simple. They have the money, they buy people, they come and they tell us to attack targets in Rawalpindi, they attack targets in Karachi, the 2 Chinese citizens that were attacked, Dasu, Lahore. So they have simpler ways of doing things. In case there is a false flag operation, there could be a chance where they could do a surgical strike, so-called surgical strike, or take the aerial route. But I think we have enough to deter them. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer, sir. The next question from the participant is, what role Pakistani and Kashmiri diaspora can play in major power centers of the world in order to expose Indian extremist mindset and strategic designs? Sir, the question is directed towards you, Sir General Zubair Mahmood.
Thank you. Having lived abroad of Pakistan for about 8 years or so in my life, and also in places where Kashmir diaspora is quite in predominance, I find that a core point of leverage is this diaspora, because it is well embedded, It is it is economically doing well. They have a voice. And they are ones who are also the direct effectees. Therefore, diaspora can actually galvanize this exterior maneuver which the Air Marshal has been talking about. Because an exterior maneuver which is only and solely taken up by the High Commission or the embassy itself has its limitation. But if you have a population which is spread right across the country and they get galvanized for a political purpose, they have a political mission, then that is unstoppable. And I believe that is something that we should cherish, and that is something that we should nourish, and that is something that we should support. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, Air Marshal Masood Akhtar, if you want to add something to this.
I will only add, this is a huge force, like what General Zubair Hayat has said. I'm afraid it has not been tapped to the extent that it can be. So this has to be done by who? Kashmir Committee. The chairman for the last so many years were recruited. I said, use the word recruited because it was more of political expediency. They didn't do a thing. The present government has not earned too many brownie points by putting, first of all, Fakhri Imam Sahib. He did shout around a little bit, but didn't do much. The present one is not doing anything. So as long as we keep putting people with political expediency, they will not be able to marshal. So we need to marshal and tap this big resource that General Zubair Hayat is saying. I think we have failed to till now. And it is high time that the government appoints a full-time Kashmir Committee chairman who does a better job. It's not too difficult. It's easy to do with commitment and with a vision and inspiration. Thank you.
Thank you, respected panelists, for answering the questions in so depth and with your valuable inputs. I hope the participants must have benefited from the question and answer session. So because of the time limitation, we will now move forward towards our concluding remarks. Now I would request the chair of the webinar, Air Marshal Farhat Hussain Khan, retired Deputy President CAS, to please deliver the concluding address. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Sir, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Right at the onset, let me first thank the honorable panelists for their very candid opinions. And I must say, some were out of the box. And that is what the strength of our panel is. I'm grateful to all of them for putting together things on the date that is very dear to us in terms of Kashmir. We sorry missed the President AJK in the Q&A. I think a very rich Q&A session. Thanks to Air Marshal Masood and General Zubair for their knowledge and experience that would help us at CAS in moving forward on the subject. Allow me to make some comments on the proceedings. First, Air Marshal Masood pointed out three very pertinent points. And the cost of repetition, I'll say, what he said, and is true, make Kashmir a model of economy and well-being for the people of Kashmir. Let them feel part of Pakistan. So therefore, they must get into the national interests of Pakistan. Second is that Kashmiris has to be stakeholders in all negotiations. Let the world know, like General Zubair is also saying, it is no more a bilateral issue. They are a party to it. India is only 33% of it. Then, I must say, we need to have it's a proposed provisional status for Jammu and Kashmir, provisional status, with some amendments somewhere in our constitutional framework. I think these are very valid observations. He also says, let's get out of the rhetoric and put the Kashmir at the right place in our national interest. Thank you very much, sir, for educating us on this. And Sardar Masood made few very valid observations. He said, the demographic change is not coming, it is already there. That means the people of Kashmir are feeling the pain coming out of these measures that the Indians took on 5th August and afterwards. His observation that our political parties in Pakistan have not made enough contribution to the cause. And I think that is what we need to do as a nation. He also made a point that it is the duty of the international community to make note of the violations and take measures to stop India from committing violations which are very serious in terms of economy, in terms of lives, in terms of kidnapping, and name many more types of violations taking place. Thousands of people in Kashmir, particularly Muslims, are suffering today because of these steps. And the world has to take cognizance of the fact. And some out of the box observation made by our Honorable General Zubair. He says, Kashmir has become pivotal to the great power competition. Yes, point to think for everybody. And the second point he made is, the Kashmir has also become trigger for the World War III. That should send a message across that India or Mr. Modi in specific, by taking these actions, have only made a mistake. With these comments, I like to make 2 points before I conclude the seminar. First is touching about the Indian state. Is it any more a secular state or not? And let me give you some background of rise of extremism in India. BJP, a political party, was formed more than 40 years ago as a political wing of RSS. It started its tally in the parliament in 1994 elections by winning only 2 seats in the entire parliament. Got another 5 years down, it had 85 seats in 1989. The figures kept going up. And as it stands today, it has 330 seats in the parliament, holds a government in 12 of the states, and is a coalition partner in 8 more states. So 20 states out of 20, the BJP has an influence. That is their growth. And what does it mean? During this entire process, they had a very planned approach to issues. Initially, for giving a softer image of India and the BJP leadership, their leadership was also relatively soft. However, in 2002, when Mr. Modi, as Chief Minister of Gujarat, carried out genocide of Muslims of Gujarat, he became a favorite of the extremist elements of BJP and RSS. Therefore, became a candidate for the top slot. Therefore, what happened or what has been done by BJP in terms of Pulwama, the false flag operation, then coming to the 5th August and subsequent actions, in my view, it has not come all of a sudden. It has been part of their manifesto and agenda. He was only waiting for the right time. When he got more strength in the parliament, we are busy somewhere else maybe. So it is not a step that has come just on this day. It's a well-planned maneuver as part of the manifesto. It is a maneuver against the Muslims in particular and minorities in general. That explains my point that India is no more a secular state. It's a hard line led by hardliners, a Hindutva state as it stands today. My second point is about the implications of the 5th August steps and subsequent measures. Some of it has been touched, but allow me to make my point that on August 5th, 21, India, through a presidential order, took away Article 35A and 370 from the Constitution and special status of Jammu and Kashmir. This triggered series of amendments and issuance of fresh laws. In excess of 40 laws have been amended to achieve the objectives. And what have they done? First implication of this, also mentioned by Zubair, these unilateral steps by Modi government is a violation of UN Security Council resolutions and calls for resolution of the issue through plebiscite as per the rights of the people of Kashmir. The issue stays there. It's on the UN agenda. The second is they've tried to take away the identity of Kashmiris, although they will never be able to take it, but they have tried it. What have they done to take the identity? Kashmir has been split in their understanding two states, two union territories, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. So technically or legally, Kashmiri Muslims struggling for freedom seem to have lost their identity, and they would now be called under the Indian Constitution Indians, will not have a special status. This is illegal as per the UN Charter. This will bring a power shift in the local. Sardar Sahab also talked about it, that through the demographic changes and the loss of domicile, now outsiders, particularly non-Muslims, can own properties at preferential and have preferential treatment in all these laws. Anybody serving in the Kashmir or has served in Kashmir for about 20 years, even his or her children are now allowed to have domicile and own property. So this demographic change would affect the balance in the communities between Muslims and non-Muslims in the region. This is what they have tried. What they've also done is they have abolished the State Human Rights Commission. Very important. Commission for Protection of Women's Rights have also been taken away from as a law. State Accountability Commission has been taken away, and scores of other institutions which were actually monitoring the state away from the Indian government, and the issues are being risen to various forums. These steps are meant for few things. One of those is India trying to hide the war crimes in Kashmir. Various structures or prominent points, buildings, roads in India, the names of Muslims or the name of Kashmir on these points are being taken away, and there's being renamed on the names of Hindus. This is a step again in the parliament. Ajit Doval said, well, Kashmir doesn't belong to Muslims. It belongs to all Indian. So everybody has the right to have a name. So that's the thinking that they have. Reportedly, the last point, these various atrocities taking place in Kashmir have so far cost the population $3.5 billion losses. Now, this loss is huge when it comes to the people. Therefore, the individuals are suffering even in the normal day-to-day living. With that, I would like to conclude this point that India, while it is not a state, it's a Hindu state. It is tried to marginalize the Muslims in their own land. But hats off to the Kashmiris who are standing up to the miseries that they've been created on them and are struggling for the just cause. And we continue, my recommendation, including what the panelists have said, is that we should keep raising the issue at every level and let the exterior maneuver be the first and the strongest element in raising the voice of the Kashmiris in the world forums. With that, I come to the end of my points, and I like to thank once again General Zubair, Marshal Masood, and Sardar Masood Khan for their valuable input and comments. Thank you very much, all the listeners.
Sir, thank you for your factual analysis of the current situation in Kashmir. And you have rightly pointed out that this is what India has been doing in Kashmir is a clear violation of UN resolutions, an attempt to identity theft, and also India is trying to cover up its war crimes. So with this, now I will move towards the a thank you note. And on behalf of CAS leadership, researchers, IT staff, and support team, we all thank you and particularly the illustrious panel who shared their knowledge and thoughts on this very critical and important issue and making this webinar a success. I am also very indebted to all the friends who joined us from Pakistan and also from all around the globe in this webinar on Zoom and other social media platforms, and also contributed some enlightening questions. Though I apologize again because of the shortage of time, we are unable to answer many questions. So ladies and gentlemen, I will end on the note that all the three speakers of the webinar have raised their concern on what India is doing in IIOJK and how Indian acts are a factor of destabilization in the region. However, on the other hand, Pakistan is and will act responsibly to to the Indian illegal actions and will highlight the Indian actions on all the relevant international forums. With this, thank you all and Allah Hafiz.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir. Allah Hafiz.